Everyone, I'll call the January 28th, 2025 Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board of Directors meeting to order at 9:31 a.m. Welcome, everybody. We do have a lot of people online due to the weather, so we'll have to be patient with me as I try to make sure I see everyone and make sure that we're here. But we do like we have quorum, so thank you, everybody, for attending. Our messages here, and that please refrain from whispers and side conversations while the meeting is running, as they could get picked up by the microphones. When the squares glow red, the microphones are muted, and they are green, so they are on. If you're a board member attending online, please have your camera on during the meeting, especially during voting, and especially during today, because that's an important one to be able to see you. There's quite a few again online, so we do have regrets from Peter as well, and so he will not be attending today. With that, I will read the territorial acknowledgements. We begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples, who have long-standing relationships to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The land, local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation at Moravian Town. In the region, there are 11 First Nations community and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all the regional people from Ohio. Are there any modifications of the agenda? Seeing none, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? None as well. We do not have any presentations or delegations. So we'll move right to administrative business, which is 5.1, approval of the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Is there a mover and a seconder for the recommendation to approve as Skylar and George, please? Discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There's no business arriving from the minutes. Correspondence. We do have some correspondence from the minister regarding agricultural representative. And so certainly the potential appointment of agricultural sector representative triggered me to make my notice of motion as well, which we'll get into later. But certainly, even though we have great agricultural representation as far as I'm concerned on the board, the province didn't think so. So we will welcome someone as well when they do that process, but that's fully up to the province and how they do that. But of course, if you know anybody who would make a great representation, I personally reached out to Alan Dale, our previous chair, and I know he's going to apply. I know that Dean has reached out to some people. So if you know anybody else who would make a great representative on the board, make sure they're aware of that appointment. And I'll turn over to Tracy.
Yeah, certainly I can answer any questions. I have a few of us general managers who have received this notice. There's been 10 conservation authorities that received the notice at this time. There was 4 previous conservation authorities that had agricultural representatives, and I believe Rideau Valley, this is the second posting for them. So in all, it'll be 13 CAs if all positions are filled. Seems to be a real mix, as you can see from the email there. Went to the Grand River, the Essex region, the Lower Thames Valley, Long Point, Niagara Peninsula, Lake Simcoe, South Nation, Quinte, and Rideau Valley. And the CAs that previously had appointments were the St. Clair, Rideau, Mississippi Valley, and the Ganaraska. So in my view, it seems to be kind of targeting those watersheds that are both rural and urban and having those mixes. And also from some general feedback from the GMs, most of the CAs listed have about 25% of their current board representatives that have an ag background. So I think we're a little higher, more like 33 or plus percentage that have that agricultural knowledge already. But again, this is a process that the province prescribes, and we'll be notified when an appointment is provided.
So any questions, response? Anna, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Would this be an added, with this appointment, would this be an added member to our board?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, Anna. It would be an added representative. There are some limitations on some of the decision making related to budgetary matters, budget vote, as well as any enlargements or dissolution of the authority. So there's certain things that the ag sector appointment cannot vote on, but otherwise a full member of the board.
Thank you.
Other questions? None. Is there a mover and a second to receive the as information? And Scotty? Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Excellent. And now we'll move to reports for consideration. And the first one is 6.1, which is UTRCA hearings guidelines update. I know that Jen is available to introduce the report. I'll turn it right over to her.
That's to Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can speak to the hearing guideline updates. With several of the changes that occurred in the legislative and regulatory framework with the CA Act and the regulations that came in 2024, there were some new regulatory requirements for when hearings need to be held at the authority for Section 20 regulation purposes. Conservation Ontario worked through the updates and provided an update template guideline for consistency across the province. So all of the updates that were identified in the hearing guideline that were identified in red were verbatim updates from the Conservation Ontario recommendations. So previously under the Act, hearings had to be held if staff were recommending denial of a permit or if we were going to impose conditions on a mandatory permit for zoning orders. Those were really the only two opportunities under the regulation in which hearings could be held. With the changes, there's now opportunities for hearings when permits are going to be canceled. So if someone's not following the conditions of a permit and staff want to cancel it, they have an opportunity to come before the hearing before the permit's canceled. And as well for extensions. So in the changes to the regulation, we now have 5 years that permits can be issued. And if we issue a permit with a lesser date and an applicant applies for an extension and we refuse that extension, that's another opportunity that has to come to a hearing under the regulations. And then finally, stop order. So now that we have stop order ability, if someone is contravening the reg and we want to issue a stop order, that individual can come to a hearing to have their say before the stop order is fully enacted. So those are new requirements under the regulation. We simply, I would refer to these as more housekeeping updates in the hearing guidelines to ensure that those are now identified in there. There's been no changes to the processes and how we conduct hearings. That all falls under the Procedural Act and Evidence Act, so that hasn't been changed. The only other one I wanted to highlight is we did include one additional consideration for the hearing committee that's outside, say, the regulatory component. And I've identified that in there as an opportunity when staff are seeking direction for technical or information purposes. So I think as we develop policies, we can't necessarily predict any scenario we may be faced with. And staff can only issue permits based on what our policies say. So if there's a situation where we don't have a policy to address whether staff should support or not support the development, we wanted to create this opportunity that this is when where staff would refer it to the hearing to seek guidance from the hearing committee. And I think by having that one, it gives us an opportunity to put more of a positive approach to it. So I think historically, if staff supported it, brought it to a hearing committee, but policy didn't support it, they'd had to put a negative recommendation. They deny it, but they support it. By adding this new policy regime, one for technical information, if staff support it, it gives them the opportunity to put in a positive recommendation that they do support it. And they're just looking for a consensus of the hearing committee that they're making the right decision. So overall, it's a housekeeping one to be compliant with the new regs, compliance with the Conservation Ontario template guideline, and then we've introduced that new one to help us deal with technical or information purposes where we just want guidance from the hearing committee.
Thank you very much. Mark, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. I'm not sure to direct a question to, but I know at the municipal level, third-party people are not allowed to anymore go to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Is that also going to be the case for our Section 28 comments or areas?
A question on who's available to participate in that process.
I can't answer that. I'd have to come back to you.
Yep, we can certainly get you an answer to that, Mark, but right now staff is saying that they just have to do some more digging on that one. Put that in the notes. Further questions of the report?
Not a question, Mr. Chair, but just thank you to staff. It's a lot of work that went into this with a lot of new regulations. to put this in front of us in a relatively short period of time. It's very much appreciated. So thanks to staff.
Any further questions? Seeing none, is there a mover and a seconder to approve the updates to the hearing guideline?
Happy to move it.
Sandy and Anna? Discussion. Certainly second Sandy's thoughts there. This is a good update to be able to provide more opportunity, be in line with the regulations as well for people that have that opportunity to have that discussion about when something's appropriate or not. So that's a good thing. Provides clarity on how we do that. So, for that. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, and 6.2 is housekeeping amendments to delegation and powers of officer appointments. And I will turn that over to Tracy.
Yes, thank you through the chair. As you can see, there's a few different recommendations for you. Again, this is about cleaning up some of the number of changes that have been made to the regulations over the past few years, and really defining that. You may have seen past reports that identify our appointment of officers, those who are available for issuing of permits. This is really just to clear it. Not sure if Joe had anything else that he wanted to add to this report as well. It kind of goes hand in hand with the last report, so.
Thank you. And just to expand on that, again, it's just to avoid any potential procedural issues. We're not recommending any changes here. It's just making sure we reference the appropriate sections in the regulation for appointing officers or delegating powers to the hearing committee and staff for issuing permits. One of the biggest changes is the appointment of officers that used to be in the reg. So as soon as they dissolve the reg, it's now written in the act. So we want to make sure we're referencing the appropriate sections for those appointments, just to avoid any procedural conflicts or issues as we move forward. So these are really just housekeeping amendments. There's no new changes. It's just making sure we're referencing the new sections that give us those powers to.
Thank you very much. Questions? Sandy?
Just through the chair, does this mean that if there's a change in personnel, another motion has to come before the board, or can that be done administratively?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think it depends on the situation. So when it comes from issuing permits, we've assigned that delegation to the position title. So anyone that's new will be there. When it comes to an appointment of officer, Conservation Ontario through M&R recommend there's a set of criteria that has to happen to be an officer, to be competent. So training, vulnerable criminal record check, certain things like that. So in that case, we have to appoint the individual as the officer, but for permits, we're appointing the position. So it depends on what powers are being appointed with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions? None. Is there a mover for the three recommendations? Jim, and second by Harj. Discussion. Seeing none. Again, thank you to staff. And I do appreciate, I like that is done by position, which makes it easier in the future where needed, and then by the person that's where that's necessary. So it certainly it makes things easier for staff and everybody in the future to keep the business rolling without having to wait for a board meeting or anything like that. So any further discussion? None. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, at this time, I'm going to, Dean, are you comfortable chairing from that virtual position? Can you see everything enough to?
I'm having trouble seeing the room, but I'm still able to operate from my vantage point. I just can't see everybody in the room if they have their hand up for a question or a comment.
Okay, we can help you on this thing. I'm just gonna take that. I'm just gonna leave the chair and hand that over to Dean because that's my modus and notion that I'm gonna introduce or put on the floor. So Dean, you are in the chair.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So item 6.3, a notice of motion has been brought forward, the per diem remuneration for members. It was submitted by Brian Petrie on January 13th, 2025 in compliance with UTRCA bylaw C14 notice of motion. Brian would like to move this, and the motion, I'll read the motion as follows: that the UTRCA set the per diem rate of remuneration for board members using the same methodology as the province of Ontario will be using for the agricultural representative that it will be appointing to the board. Schedule A, level 1 of the agencies and appointments directive, chair and vice chair honorariums remain at current levels. So Schedule A, the per diem remuneration for board governed provincial agencies and advisory agencies, level 1 basic, members up to $150 per day, vice chairs up to $175 per day, chairs up to $225 per day. And furthermore, that the rate effect takes effect at the first meeting following the passing of the 2025 authority budget. That's the motion as presented by Brian and published in the agenda. At this time, I'll give, actually, I'll look for a seconder first, and then I'll give Brian an opportunity to make further presentation on the reasoning.
Dean, I know, this is Paul. I know you can't see me on the screen, but I wish to second this motion.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So I'll ask the recording secretary to note that Paul Mitchell has seconded the motion that's been introduced by Brian. So now at this time, I'll give Brian Petrie the opportunity to present his reasoning for this motion. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This comes down to following the province's lead on this. They've wanted to appoint an agricultural representative, and they set that rate at $150 per day using the method that is described in the motion. I think from an equity standpoint, all members should be compensated equally, certainly from that standpoint. And I also think that we should be using the methodology for the vice chair and the chair. There is added responsibilities for those roles. And certainly, you know, the province's wisdom on that is there. And it's one of those things where the process for updating the board's remuneration in the past meant a trip to the OMB, Ontario Municipal Board at the time, to be able to present your case. So for a long time, over 20 years, and other reasons, it just was not updated. And so currently the meeting rate is $59 a day. I know some members who are elected officials, they have rules from their council where they don't get extra compensation. But certainly, we do have citizen members as well, and we want to make sure that I want to make sure that people are adequately compensated for their time. This is a very complicated organization. There's a lot of roles, there's a lot of knowledge to learn, and people are putting their time in. And so I think the least we can do is follow the same way that the province calculates their remuneration, and I don't see how they would have a problem with that. It's their rules. So certainly happy to have further discussion on it though.
Okay, thanks, Brian. At this time, before I open up to questions or comments from the members, I'll ask our general manager, Tracy Annette, if she has any comments at this time regarding this motion. Tracy?
Yes, thank you, Dean. Through you. I just also polled those 10 other general managers that we're looking at their per diems as well. The per diem rates vary across the province, of course, and they also have some municipalities that do not allow for remuneration through per diem. Many expected that similar direction would be coming from their board to make sure that there was that alignment and making sure that there is equity on their boards, their representation as such. So just providing a little bit more of that as background, and also that staff are preparing a report for next month on our mileage rates as well to align with CRA. So I see this as one little step in aligning other pieces of direction that come from the province or others to make more of a policy shift to allow for maintenance of those rates moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. So I'll open up the floor to any comments or questions from the members.
And again, you can't see me, but Paul would like to speak to the motion.
Yep, go ahead, Paul.
I was happy to second this motion and to speak in favor of it. And it's always tricky when politicians decide on their own pay. And it's especially tricky when there's been a long-term wage freeze in this case, because the increases would tend to be significant, which could lend to negative public relations. And various councils and boards use various methods to determine fair pay for their members for the reason of avoiding the negative public relations. In Zorn Township, our policy is that members of council receive the same annual percentage increase as township staff do, with the based on that members of council are also employees of the township. We just have less job security than the other employees do. Council and boards of directors have a unique management structure in that we have a group of people with a basic knowledge of what's going on, giving direction to staff members who are experts in what they do. And a couple of years ago, we had an outside consultant prepare a report on what was fair compensation for our staff and how we should adjust our hourly pay grid to remain competitive. But we didn't look at the pay grid for members of the board. So in order to get some numbers, I looked at the minutes for the 2024 meetings, and the average board meeting was 2.5 hours long. Now, I personally spend about 5 hours or more preparing for a meeting, and I know I'm a slow reader and a slow thinker, but I've taken a number of courses over the years on how to run an effective meeting and how to provide training, whether it was the fire department, Red Cross, or even hockey practices. And at all that training, they've drilled into us that your preparation time twice as much as your presentation time to be effective. So if you use the theory that prep time should be 2 to 1, that's another 5 hours. And I think from the quality of questions and debate that we have at the board, that most people spend a considerable amount of time preparing for the meetings. So if 2.5 plus 5 is 7.5 hours, $59 per meeting divided by 7.5 hours means that we are paid $7.87 an hour to be on the board, which is well below minimum wage. Even at $150 an hour, or $150 a meeting, that's still only $20 an hour. So we're not moving into the upper 1% on income on that. The other thing I looked at was the impact on the budget. And there again, looking at last year's meetings, the average attendance at a board meeting was 13 members. So the impact at the current rate would be 13 municipal representatives at $59 a meeting, 10 meetings a year, and 1 ag rep at $150 a meeting for 10 meetings a year, totals $9,170. Under the proposed rate, there would be 11 municipal reps at $150, 1 ag rep at $150, 1 chair at $225, 1 vice chair at $175, for a total of $22,000, which is an increase of $12,830, which percentage-wise looks like a huge increase. But I'll point out that the 2025 draft budget has total expenses of $26,538,076. So a little under 13,000 is a pretty insignificant number when you compare it to the dollar figures that we're dealing with here as a board. And I'll also point out that the per diem rate is per day, and not per meeting. So the people that are on the Finance and Audit Committee and on the Hearings Committee don't get paid extra because we schedule those meetings for the same day as board meetings. So that the extra pay for all the extra work and responsibility that goes with being on those committees is literally a free lunch. So I think that it makes sense that, as it said, it's been 20 years since this has been addressed, that the change, not only that all members should be paid the same, and there should be recognition for the extra duties of chair and vice chair. So I fully support this motion that Brian has brought forward.
Okay, thanks, Paul, for your analysis and comments. Mark, I see your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dean. I just wanted to sort of add to the fact that many of us have certainly on our committee have volunteered at different levels throughout the years. And it's those volunteer efforts that probably assisted us to get elected to our various councils. I, for example, have been on the Recreation Advisory Committee in Woodstock since 1999. So that's now 26 years of volunteering for a municipal committee. Now, I'm now on that committee as a member of council, but it's not like I'm getting paid additionally to sit on that committee and various other committees. But the UTRCA, I think, with our commitment to understanding the knowledge and again, as Paul Mitchell described, understanding what's on the agenda for each meeting, we certainly deserve compensation, in my opinion, above and beyond what we get for our certain council meetings. So I would certainly agree with this motion and thank Mr. Mitchell for all that research he's done. Good work, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Are there any other members attending live that would like to speak? Sandy, go ahead, please.
It's the procedural question first. So we are voting on this today, or is it, okay, I see heads nodding. So I'm going to take a bit of a contrary position, and I don't mean to be petty in this, and it's just having spent a little time in the public sector in an HR role, and also on 2 council compensation committees. One thing I've learned is everybody's underpaid and overtaxed except those people over there. Second, we knew what we were getting into when we volunteered or were assigned this. So there's part of me that says, let's leave it for the incoming board coming in 2027. That tends to be how the City of London deals with its changes in compensation for its council. I get the equity piece. And I also get that, the number is, when you get down to it, is a rounding error for the City of London in particular, maybe even for us. But it's really funny. It's appearances and the small stuff that people get their head around really quickly and look at and say, why are you doing that now? And I understand Paul's calculations very easily. And it is a small amount of money for doing something that I think some of us actually like doing and might even do as volunteers. Maybe just me, I don't know. But again, going back, it's the little stuff that people can easily get their heads around that sometimes blow up into being bigger things than they should be. And I'm of the mind that the difference in the remuneration per day is not significant, but because it's not significant, it becomes a potential landmine, particularly around budget time, when we are talking about, in this year anyway, a relatively large increase. Now, I know it can be absorbed. I know it's not going to show up in the bottom line. But again, it's a matter of appearances. So I leave the board with that and pass it on to the next person.
Okay, thanks, Sandy, for your comments and observations. I'll turn to Anna next. Go ahead, please, Anna.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing me and really appreciate everyone's comments. I do have, maybe it is a procedural question through you to maybe the mover or the seconder. As it relates to per day, and I understand we've put in our committee meetings on the same day as our board meetings, but if we are going to make those changes on other days, I do have a question about that. So maybe my first question is, if we are going to be moving committee meetings or working groups to other days than our board meetings, would the remuneration be looked at when we consider moving these meetings to other days? I am supportive of the motion, but I think I have concerns about this remuneration sort of adding up to more than what the intent of this motion is.
So Dean, I can start with an answer on that question. if you like,
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. So certainly I'll turn to Tracy for a further explanation, but right now the board, the hearing committee meetings and the finance and audit committee meetings are done on the same day to try to get efficiency done and then make sure that people don't have to travel multiple times. And so that's a way that the board is being efficient. But certainly there are those times where hearings, committees cannot be scheduled at the same time. There's time precedents and stuff like that. Same with finance and audit. It'd be my impression that a per diem would be paid for those extra days. And I'm seeing Tracy nod her head because those are extra times. But I think you'd see the board has wanted those to be on the same day to try to create efficiencies. And at most times they are scheduled in our regular, which we'll see come up in a further report about trying to match those up to be efficient. Certainly this motion was brought forward in a timing wise and implementation timing wise, because we do have an agriculture rep that's going to be appointed. And so I would normally agree with Sandy 100% that should be done at the next term. And certainly this is why I'm putting this forward while I'm in the chair when we switch over to at the end of this meeting to a different chair that, that's something that's a term. So it's not, it's applying something to a new term as far as a new year goes. So I'll leave that there and and Tracy, did you want to?
Yeah, no, I'll just clarify to Anna, if I may, through the chair. And yes, it is a per day. And as Brian indicated, we have at the request of the board to build some efficiencies, included either finance or audit or regularly scheduled hearings committee meetings on the same day as our board members, our board meetings, in order to ensure that we are being more efficient as well. So there will be some occasions where there are special meetings. That's the case always. And then the remuneration will be for that new day. But generally our approach is to try to ensure our meetings are all on the same days.
Appreciate the
thanks.
clarification.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Brian. Skylar, I see your hand up. Go ahead, please, Skylar.
Thank you. I'm generally supportive of this, but I did have two questions. And sorry if I missed it. I just wanted to check that the London councillors wouldn't receive a stipend because we already don't. I just wanted to triple check that.
Yes, if I can through the chair, that is correct.
City policy.
Great. Oh yes, and I heard somebody whisper city councillor, so good mics down there. And then additionally, the other question I had, or I guess it's more of a comment, but I'm okay to review this maybe in a year or two if we feel like it does get out of hand, because I will say at the health unit, we just switched to being to have something certain times. Like if the meeting only lasts half an hour, you get 25% of the stipend. If the meeting lasts over an hour, you get 50, whatever, because we're having issues where people are having half-hour meetings and that, like, to prep for something or to get ready for a conference to chat with staff, and then it started billing at a bit of a obnoxious rate. And so we've cut that down to being like, if it is a smaller amount of time, you only get a certain amount. So I think for us, since our meetings generally last 2 or 3 hours, and if you had another meeting that's another 2 hours, it makes sense to just call it for the day. But anyway, I'm going to support this because I think it's a good idea. I think it's only fair. But I'd say maybe we just review it in 2 years and see if it's, tracking how we want it to be tracking.
Okay, thanks, Skylar. Anyone else on the live attendance that has a question? If not, Anna has her hand up. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing me again. I would definitely second that, and I wonder if the mover would be accommodating to a slight amendment, friendly amendment to the motion, that it would be reviewed.
Oh, certainly. I think all policies should be reviewed regularly to make sure that they're doing what we want them to do. And certainly if if we're following the schedule that the province put out, if that changes, then it would change. That's really what the motion is about, is that we follow what the province does. So, because that's what the ag rep is going to get remunerated as. And so we're just, what I'm asking for is that, oh, my computer shut off, that we follow what they do. And that makes it easier on all of us. We're not really setting our rate. We're just setting what we are, how we set our rate, and following the province's lead. It could go up, it could go down. But yeah, I support that.
So it's based on the minister's sort of announcement, but I would like to, I'm a little cautious. I'm generally supportive of this motion, but I am a little bit cautious that things may change. And I think it's good, and any board member coming in or putting their name forward should have a good understanding. Like Mr. You did mention this hasn't been done in 20 years, and I think it would be good governance for the board to make sure that we were on top of the changes that can happen to our remuneration. So those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Any other questions or comments?
Dean, if I can, just
Go
to
ahead.
add, thank you for recognizing me too. Just to add and follow up on Anna's clarification point there, is that for implementation, our approach would be to include this in our administrative bylaw. So then it becomes something that is outlined in that bylaw, reflects the provincial schedule of their agencies and appointments directive. And then that way that can be monitored over time and updated accordingly. So we're in alignment with the same direction as the province.
Okay, and I guess my question, Tracy, is how often does this board review the administrative bylaw? On what frequency?
It's usually annually, if not more, if there's been legislative changes that reflect amendments that are needed to be incorporated into the bylaw. So at least
Okay.
annually.
So if the board wanted to, there's been two comments from two members about doing a check-in on these rates. So the review of the administrative bylaw would be the opportunity to do that check-in. Am I reading that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there would be opportunity to undertake such a review when the administrative bylaw comes up for review on an annual basis. Okay,
Dean, I have more comment if I could.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The other reason behind this is I know there's comments about volunteerism and service, and that's always a good thing. I always draw the line between committees and boards. You know, we have a fiduciary responsibility. There's a responsibility for staffing. There's responsibility for legislation here. And so there is competition. We have a lot of elected officials on our board now, and there's competition for them to be on other conservation authorities as well. And so that extra level of responsibility is where I think compensation needs to come into play. And certainly I agree with Paul that this is not, you know, nobody's retiring. This is not becoming a full-time position by any means. So I think it's just one of those things where we recognize the level of what we want, and it sends a message to people who are applying that there is a responsibility level here. Certainly we'll want people, I can't say enough. We have a great board of people who are, we've always had a board, whether they're getting $59 a meeting or whatever, that are $59.50, sorry, that are very attentive and prepared. I'm not worried about that ever, you know, but it is one of those things where people are giving up their time. They are prepared. It is a serious role that we take here. We have a lot of decisions that we make that affect people's properties and development and everything else. So we want to make sure that people are aware of that responsibility when they sign up. And certainly, like you said, it is a very difficult thing to try to set one's own compensation. So I think that's why I was actually, when I saw this from the province, it was like, okay, this is something where we can tie it to something that's external to the board, that somebody else has gone through. And imagine they've done a compensation review at the province and looked into what fair compensation levels is. These are not exorbitant patronage things that the province is giving out. So I think that it's reasonable And certainly, and that's why I can support it. And I certainly want everybody to be able to show up. And if they do have to take time out of their lives and then their roles and their jobs and things, they're adequately being compensated at a rate that's not a discount, because we know everything's getting more expensive. And so it's just easier for people to make sure they can attend the meetings as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks, Brian. One more check. I don't see any hands up online. Any other hands up in person?
Dean, it's Paul.
Yes, go ahead.
So back to the discussions about reviewing this, do we need to make it a formal amendment to the motion that's been presented? That it does, that it is reviewed as part of the administrative policy on an annual basis?
Yeah, well, I think judging by the general manager's comments, no, because the annual review comes up as a matter of fact. And it would include this item, but if at the discretion of the mover and seconder, if they wanted to include an amendment that this would be reviewed annually, or whatever time, if they would like to include an amendment, it's at the discretion of the mover and the seconder. I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Chair, I'm comfortable the way it is, hearing the conversation from the general manager that it will be part of the annual review in there, so we can have a look at that. And I'm sure members of the board will remember this conversation as we get into that review cycle.
Okay, thanks, Brian, for that information. So any last call for questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing anything. So we have the motion that's been presented, moved by Brian Petrie, seconded by Paul Mitchell. So I will call the question at this time. All those in favor? How many hands up do we have on the floor?
4, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so 4, 6, 7, and opposed, if any?
We have 1, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I believe that motion is carried as presented. So I believe that covers agenda item 6.3. So our next agenda item, I will turn it over to Chair Petrie.
Thank you very much, sir. I know it's never easy chairing virtually, so well done. So I will call for a motion to go into closed session this time. By George, seconded by Sandy. Discussion on that? None. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we'll just take a couple minutes.
I'm joking.
This is our council.
How do you break it down on the hour basis? And that's not.
It's possible. Yeah.
It's like you're my favorite.
Excavator. Bill has one that I'm shaking her head.
Yes. Are you sure?
Okay.
Are you sure you're in the right for this?
Yeah.
I'm actually giving them. They will. This will come to do this. There's never a good time to make a big.
There's never good. Okay. Good, excellent. Welcome back, everyone. We are now going to rise and report. So with that, I need a mover and a seconder for that. The board of directors received closed session report from agenda 7.1 for information. Moved by Paul, seconded by Jean. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. And the second one is that the board of directors received closed session report agenda item 7.2 for information. We were a seconder for that. Jim and George. Discussion on that. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Excellent. Thank you very much. And that moves on to reports from information. It's 8.1 administrative enforcement section 28. Certainly Jen is available to answer any questions of the report. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just highlight that that we will be providing our annual summary at the AGM. This gives us an opportunity to review the whole year in a comprehensive manner, and then that same report will be the problems.
Questions? Cindy?
For you to the chair, and thank you, Tracy, for that comment, because it's the annual report that also shows how we're meeting our timelines. And the second piece is just to say, I guess, publicly that we have awarded the contract for the streamlining initiative and work has begun, and it will be completed. There'll be recommendations in this calendar year. Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, can I have a mover and a second to receive that as information? Harj and Skylar, very much. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we will now move on to funding application update 8.2. Certainly highlights the work that staff do to leverage. You can see there's a lot of work going in there to try to pound the payment and get those dollars. Leverage that's category 3 and others money to make sure that we are meeting our obligations and do this programming that's available. So certainly it is a highlight of UTRCA that we have the capacity to do that, and it certainly leads to the betterment of the whole watershed and our municipalities. So certainly that's something that needs to be supported, and thank staff a lot for. Certainly we're heading into what seems to be a provincial election. So maybe some of these will not be delayed in finding out depending on when they are. And it seems like we could be heading into a federal election as well. So, but hopefully, as usual, the staff always have quite a amount of success with their skill level. And so look forward to that as well. I'll turn it over to Tracy.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Certainly it does highlight the effort that the staff do, and I always look to Teresa. She's always great for looking at what can be put in a proposal, and but recognizing that it's usually a large group that go into putting together these proposals, especially given the size of the projects. They are impacting and help to fund numerous staff in numerous of our different units. So it's something that there's all that contribution in writing these proposals and making sure that the work that's being applied for aligns with our overall goals. So I just highlight that and recognize that yes, we don't always get all of them, but I think we've got a pretty good track record. And we also do look at what amounts the funding proposals are in comparison to what reporting requirements there are. Sometimes there's that balance that we may choose not to apply for something if we've been through that and seen onerous amounts of reporting that really take away from the work that we do. So highlighting that it is and is always straightforward in what is being expected, the reporting at the end. But I think having this report in advance of our budget updates shows what.
Excellent. We'll go to Mark first. Question.
Maybe not really a question, more of just a statement. You'll probably notice one of the lines of funding towards the UTRCA is for the Woodstock Environmental Advisory Committee, sending $6,500 towards the UTRCA, and that's a combined total for two different projects. One being the fact that Woodstock is hosting the Children's Water Festival at Pittock this year in 2025, and also the Brick Ponds Education Program. And the Brick Ponds Education Program is significant in the fact that Brad Hertner attended our Environment Advisory Committee, one of the committees I sit on, obviously in Woodstock as well. And Brad Hertner did an excellent explanation and update as to what's happening at Brick Ponds and the fact that there's now sort of a boardwalk or a walkway out to a viewing area. And that if that continues to be promoted for educational purposes for school trips or small school trips within the city, that it's a very educational foundation to be worked on there. And so that money, plus of course the Children's Water Festival, are two programs that Environment Advisory Committee in Woodstock wanted to promote.
Well, thank you very much. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just checking in on a couple things. When the vice chair and I met with Mayor Morgan in London, one of the things he asked about in our budget was the money coming in from other orders of government in particular, and how that affected our hiring. And we assured him that we don't hire people until actually the money is signed, the contracts are signed. So he was quite relieved to hear that we don't plan for things to happen until they've happened. The other piece of that is as well, if I, just confirming my understanding that while many of these are category 3 programs, we are able to mitigate some of the category 1 costs, i.e. levy, because of the arrangements that allow some overheads to be moved over. So these are actually, if I don't have the numbers yet, but they can be net positives to not only our budget, but also to the work that staff do that benefits the watershed as a whole. Is that still correct?
Yes, if I can through the chair, that's absolutely correct. Especially when we're seeing the larger funding received through the Canada Water Agencies, that actually offset a significant amount of our overhead costs. So any funding that comes in, again, helps to offer or offset those costs when there's eligible expenses that allow some of that funding to be used for overhead.
Excellent. Paul.
Yeah, I want to thank Teresa for the excellent quality of this report. Staff have told the board on many occasions the importance of getting grants and outside funding. And this report really lays it out there, not only the importance of the dollars that come in, but tremendous amount of work that goes into preparing all these applications and how important it is as part of the whole overall funding picture of the board. So when I analyzed it, I came up with there are 32 successful applications from 25 agencies for a total of $25,578,000, give or take a few dollars. There were 3 applications to be determined and 2 applications to decline. So that made me think of a few questions. And the first one was, are all these applications in the calendar year 24, or are they spread out over long? As far as the applications, I know the money coming in is spread out, but the work to make the applications.
A couple of things. I don't write all the applications. I just need to make sure everybody understands. That's why it's really, I want to make sure everybody sees all the units that writes the applications. I take from a big log that we have, this continual log that people are supposed to put their stuff in. Jason. And all I've done in this report is tried to show what we're going to bring in 2025. So some of these started in 2024, some of them even started in 2023. So I've included those. So anything here is definitely going to be 25. So I don't know if that answers your question. They've all been applied for in 24.
Okay. So based on that, is this typical as far as number of applications submitted, the number that were denied? And if you take out the 17.4 million, that one big project, that leaves about 4.1 million. Is that typical of what we bring in a granting period?
I have to say that we had a period of a few years there where the province wasn't going to touch us with a 10-foot pole. So we saw a real drop in maybe the last 3 years. Relations have kind of normalized over this past year, and you can see funding from MECP, you see OMAFRA, I get that right. And that, you know, they're really coming back. We are really, you know, a serious delivery agency for those agencies. And so now it's open season again, we can apply for that funding. So I'd say we're probably up a little bit than a little higher than we used to be, but we're back to a little bit more normal. We're cautiously optimistic when we go after these funds now.
Good to hear. Of the two that were declined, were you given reasons why they were declined, or is just a straight no?
I probably could have added more in the declined. I was trying to show that lands and facilities are out there banging the door just like everybody else. No, usually we don't get a lot of information. There are times when we actually do go back and bother to, like when I said the squeaky wheel, we try to go back and go, you know, why didn't we get it? What's going on? But you have to be really careful when you do that. These are long-term relationships with bureaucrats. So we're careful when we go back and talk about, you know, what can we do better?
Okay. And my last question is about the one of that was declined had to do with the EV charging stations. So given that EVs or future of EVs is a little bit uncertain right now, and when I say that, I'm thinking of changes down south with Trump's policies versus Biden's policies. The fact that a lot of car companies are slowing down their transition to EVs. Tesla announced that the price is going up $4,000 to $9,000 depending on the model. The government $5,000 rebate is no longer there, and the incoming, hopefully an incoming new federal government, one of their policies, couple of their policies will be to get rid of the carbon tax and the EV mandate. So all those things make, in my mind, EVs, the future of EVs a little less certain than it was a few months ago. So what impact of not getting that grant for EV charging station has on the number of EV stations that we plan to install in this year or the future?
I think Rick can answer that question.
Yes, thank you for the question. Good to share. Great question. Given the uncertainty of where EVs are going in the political climate down south and even here in Canada, we're certainly revising our ask for the EV charging stations. So we were unsuccessful, and I think it was 65,000 in funding. In 2024, there was 75,000 that was approved through levy from the board to install these EV charging stations. And so what we're looking at is, as opposed to installing 5 to 10 charging stations, level 2s and level 3s, we will be looking at pursuing just 2 or 3 level 2 chargers, and that would come at a cost of $7,500 approximately. That would further support our existing EV fleet, 4 plug-in hybrid EVs or straight EV charger vehicles, and would support another additional 2 if we decide to continue with our EV fleet as well.
So there's been some adaptation to the original plan based on significant money coming in.
Yeah, significant refinement to our original ask and to our plans in installing EVs, the locations and the type of infrastructure and where it'll be located and how we'll be using it as well.
If I could just add to that, I think we have to be careful about the what's going to come and what is here. I'll give you an example. If one of our goals is to make sure that we get a lot of people out to our parks and recreation opportunities, especially from cities. That's where mostly, certainly EVs in rural areas. But I'll give you an example of in Ingersoll, just out by the highway, they just installed Tesla superchargers. They just got that project done. And I had to go in and take a picture, which I could share with you afterwards. It is packed. It was absolutely packed with cars in there coming off the highway because there is a extreme need for more charging infrastructure. The federal, as part of the automakers group, we hear it from the industry as well, as that the federal government has targets to be able to meet EV production, but the amount of EV chargers is not keeping up with it, and it's not be able to roll out that infrastructure. So I would hope that we certainly want to have the ability to be financially sustainable, but we certainly want to make sure that we can have those people come to our facilities. And one of those is just having that infrastructure there because they're looking on ways where they're traveling to make sure that and gets them in the door. But certainly it's harder because the The problem is everybody is asking for that funding because the need is so much for that infrastructure. So, yeah, it's a problem everywhere. I could not believe how like there's 15 of them and they were all full. It was I'm mind blown. So, yeah, further questions?
No, thanks again for the report and for the answers.
Yeah, excellent. Is there a mover and a seconder to receive this as information? Skylar and a seconder, Scotty. Discussion, further discussion? I'll say again is thank you to staff. Message to the board members is make sure your municipalities know that we got a great partner at UTRCA. We all pay into this and we all benefit from it. And certainly staff go out and they leverage those funds that we get to a great degree. We know it's like 88, it's 88 cents on the dollar that we put in. So my request to you is go out, talk to your staff, see how we can, what kind of plans they have that fit in. Again, like the city of Woodstock, they're putting funding in and they're going to receive more back on that. And certainly the residents are as well. And they host the water festival. That's going to be a great economic boom. So $6,500. I know it's for 2 projects, but that's a great investment to get that sort of economic investment back in the community and have those different items that happen. The only request I could, maybe in next year's report, is that if we could put a category 1, 2, or 3 on it. I know most of these are category 3 because the WECI stuff is more category 1, but that would just give the board even a more, as we get more into that mindset of those categories about how that affects things. So we can make sure that we know about that. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we will now move on to the status update report, project status updates. And certainly that's something that is ongoing, and it's one of those items that's going to be it's just a wonderful document. I can't say enough about this. It gives us a great look back and an accomplishment. We say this is what's been accomplished, and certainly it's been a lot. And so we don't want to forget what happened over the last year and what staff have done to make sure we've moved through all these large projects that have happened. And certainly it's a useful one to keep us on task so we can go back and read that. And I'll turn it over to Tracy for another comment as well.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. Just wanted to highlight that we'll recognize some of these accomplishments at the AGM. And then again, this project update will kind of reset for the following year. So a new budget is approved. And then again, some of those legislative things are complete. But a little bit providing a little bit of a clean copy, I guess, and lining up for ahead.
Is there any questions or comments on the project status update? Seeing none, move in a second to receive this information. Sandy and George, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 8.4, draft budget municipal feedback. Certainly, I want to thank Tracy. I went last year on the road tour for a lot of it. This year, Tracy has been out there pounding the pavement, getting in front of councils, hearing their feedback. And I know that's a lot of work, especially in the winter months. Everybody meets at different times. So thank you very much for keeping those lines of communications going. And I know that sometimes it's not always seemed as appreciative, the message we get back, but I think that opportunity to have that conversation is always appreciated. So thank you for that and bringing those comments back, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. And I'd also like to introduce Craig Mile. He gets the joy of having 3 different municipalities whom he's representing and joined me in all those budget discussions. So I would just highlight that generally the council presentations that I have undertaken, there is some concern about the consistent raising of our levy over the past few years, but there also seems to be that recognition that we really have very limited alternatives to raise funds. The freeze on fees is having a tremendous impact, as well as having aging infrastructure and the costs associated with just maintaining that aging infrastructure seems to be very, very well understood amongst our municipal partners. So all in all, sometimes it's a bit of the hot seat in some municipalities, but all appreciated having that more fulsome discussion and being able to ask those questions. Thanks again. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to respond.
Hey, Mr. Chair, just a comment and then, well, maybe they're both comments. I noticed in the report that Mayor Strathby in St. Mary's sends a consistent message every year about City of London and its pollution control. And I just thought perhaps councillors Hopkins and Frank, who are on the city's infrastructure committee, might want to touch base with Jim and the mayor to talk about London's pollution prevention control plan that's in progress. It's not going to be finished until this summer, as I understand it from staff, but it's a bigger project than just separating combined sewers. There's a lot of overflows in various places that aren't tracked, and there's recognition that there's more that the city can do. So I think the communication piece is a good one. Now, having said that, that's a lot of infrastructure costs, and some of it's paid by other orders of government, some of it's because of growth, and it's paid by development charges. So caution as well, because every now and again, various politicians at various levels talk about taking development charges off of what municipalities can charge. So if there isn't that money, where does the money come from to do the infrastructure that's necessary to reduce pollution going into our water courses, or et cetera, et cetera? So if you make one change, there are consequences that may not be addressed all the time. So 2 suggestions or 2 comments. Hopefully the education piece with the mayor happens. And Jim, if you could take that forward or touch base with either Skylar or Anna, hopefully that leads to good discussions.
You know, I think those are great suggestions. Every time we have that, you know, UTRCA is made up of, we're not unique, but, you know, truly Southwestern Ontario of that urban and rural mix, and each have their own problems and their own solutions and their own issues and understandings and roles, right? So I can't agree with you more that that conversation between those 2 entities makes a lot of sense, because we can learn from each other about certainly the issues that one faces and the other faces. So certainly, Jim, I do want to thank you a lot for your participation. Thank you for your commitment that way. I know it's not easy, but you've shown great leadership there. So thank you very much. And Anna, you do have your hand up there as well. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Sandy for his comments as well, which I'll take into consideration. I always appreciate getting an update before the AGM as to what other municipalities are saying and what their concerns are. And I noticed the City of London is sort of missing in this update. I know we'll receive additional information before the AGM, but just wondering if you've met with the City of London and if there's anything that can be shared now. My first question.
Yeah, through the chair, with the City of London having their different budget process, it was something that we fell within the multi-year approval of the budget that was approved in 2024. So our numbers aligned with 2025. So there wasn't a need to submit a revised business case for any changes to our budgeting process. That's something that we report back on through city finance staff, and already looking forward more broadly to 2026 amounts. We do need to follow up with city staff on what those projections look like and some of the complexities, because the way we present our budget related to our capital expenditures and our operating expenditures, it's very different from how the City of London views some of our capital expenditures for the structures that are only partially funded by the City of London, like Wildwood Dam and like Pittock Dam. So more conversations have to happen there, and we're looking forward to sourcing that out for the following year. As I understand, the 2025 budget has been approved. We heard the mayor's address this past week, certainly highlighting that there's additional $13 million in funds that need to be found in order to reduce those increases to less than 5% for the city next year on the tax levy. And that's where we're starting already to look next year. Let's just, Christine just wants to finish off this year. Few things left to do before tidying up the loose ends there.
Yeah, what I'll add to that is, again, as Tracy said, there was a lot of communication at the beginning of the year on the goals of the City of London and the budget, and so staff were able to take that in consideration. Of course, London being 64% of the watershed, there's constant communication going back and forth about those goals. And certainly I sent a message to Mayor Morgan about, you know, it is a positive of communicating early in the process to try to have what their goals are and make sure that way they can be addressed. And I would put that to every municipality. The more communication going back and forth of what the goals of the municipality are and you know, the needs for capital and stuff like that, the better that they can try to be accommodated within the budgetary. It's always hard right at the last minute. Staff are working on this budget document throughout the year to build it up. And really, this is a time for information, but that doesn't mean it has to stop the communication efforts one bit. They should be intensified and always thinking about the next year about how that can be incorporated, especially on the capital side. We know that there's more variation on that for each municipality. And again, how that incorporates into their capital budget so they can be ready for that. And Anna, you have your hand up still, so please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm really pleased that you are in constant communication, I think, with the City of London. I do want to just make sure that we are, because our timelines are a little out of sync. I know we start in November, but the City of London does do an annual review of its budget. Usually we start in October, so it's really important that we're aware and communicating with city staff and with the mayor's office. I do have another question around the review of the phosphorus plan that we've got. I noticed a few municipalities were inquiring about that. I wonder, are we going to be given an update on that program and where we're at as well?
Yeah, through the chair, thanks for the question, Anna. That's certainly the larger program. I believe Tatiana gave the presentation, was it in November? I believe October or November's meeting, and then now that delivery is happening. So a number of, especially our rural municipalities, the news has been getting out about grants available for different pest management practices like cover crops, and wanting to learn more. So that was something I did highlight in the presentation, given it's such a large program that benefits are and delivery of the category 3 in those rural areas, but also it covers those and helps to reduce those overhead costs. So it's really trying to highlight that. Many of the municipalities had more questions because many of those rural municipalities have a number of farmers sitting around their council chambers. So Tatiana's already lining up presentations at a few other municipalities to go out and explain a little bit more and promote a little bit more about that program.
Any further questions on the budget update? Jim, please.
Thank you, Chair Petrie. I would just like to say that Tracy, when I went to visit South Huron with her and Perth South, Tracy did an excellent job. And she did mention in her initial remarks that sometimes you're in the hot seat. I should say that at Perth South, she was in the hot seat. She handled herself very well. I think we got all the questions answered, but the continuation of the Upper Thames % increase annually above inflationary still looms large with them, and they kept hitting on that point for Tracy for down the road. So it was a great learning experience for me, and I wish I had a lot more knowledge so that I could have helped her out a lot better.
No, thank you very much for those comments. And I will say that those comments are consistent with Perth South's concerns in the past. And certainly that's, I think from everybody's point of view around the table, we want to limit the increases, but we have to be responsible as well. And I think that's really what this budget is about is, I don't get too much in a budget discussion because we don't have that, but it is about righting the ship and making sure that we're being responsible. And so we can make those changes in the future that we're towards those goals. So I can't stress enough the importance of that feedback. There's no rules that you have to agree. It's just, but if everybody's respectful and prizes that feedback, it is very helpful to know where everybody's sitting. And so it's appreciative that the time was taken to not only answer questions, but to ask questions and to make sure that that was provided for all board members to get a sense. It's a big watershed. There's a lot of different items going on, so it's good to have those different perspectives. So I believe we do have a mover and a seconder, correct? Nope. Okay, we'll get a mover and a seconder now. Anna and Dean. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Right, that takes us to the, there we go, 8.5, annual meeting details. And certainly I'll turn that right over to.
Yes, thank you. I always like to give a little bit of a verbal reminder and update about the AGM next month. The AGM is always an opportunity that really opportunity for us to get together and reflect on the year. So it is an in-person meeting. The first part of the meeting will be our regular business meeting and consideration of our budget, while the second half of the meeting will recognize the accomplishments in 2025, or in 2024 rather. We'll be recognizing those staff milestones and watershed residents for some significant contributions that they've made as well. And lunch will be provided afterwards. So just want to again remind everyone that's the plan for the day. And hopefully we'll have good weather. I hope I didn't just jinx ourselves. We don't have the road conditions that we did this morning. So looking forward to having everyone in the room.
Yeah, just again, I'll reiterate that point. It is, if at all possible, to be an in-person meeting that day. That's at least once a year we get to everybody here, especially for the presentations to staff and our award recipients. Very nice to have the full board here so everybody can participate in that. It's a good day. Is there a mover and a seconder to receive that report as information? Paul and Harsh. Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we'll go to 8.6, which is the Thames River Current. Make sure you subscribe to that. If you're not, subscribe all your council members. Just put their email in and they'll get it. I don't know if that's legal, but they'll appreciate it, trust me. And mover in a second to receive that as information. Jean and George. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Always good content in there. Then we have reports committee updates, finance and audit committee, and the hearings committee. Don't believe there's any updates for this is the hearings committee, which was going to meet after this, just for a very, we're basically just receiving the minutes so we can wrap up the year end on that one. But if anybody's interested in hearing, it's a great way to say what goes on there on a very small scale. And certainly, it's a great way to learn some more about what goes on in our committees. Of note, committee meetings are always open to all board members. Of course, participation is not, but always open, and they're always being filmed unless they're going to closed session. So it's a great way to, again, gain knowledge of what happens at those ones. I need to receive those because there's no. Okay. Okay, we are going to turn this over. We're going to go into elections. Right page here. So I am going to request a motion to give Grant his once a year duties as chair, whether he wants them or not, to acting chair for the purpose of conducting the 2025 election. Sorry. Is there a mover and a seconder? Make Grant Inglis the acting chair. Paul and Jean. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And with that, your duties, sir.
I will be the easiest politician to get rid of.
Addicting.
And I hope those at home can hear me. This election is going to be conducted in accordance with the Conservation Authorities Act and our administrative bylaw section B under governance. So the elections will be conducted in the following order. Number one will be the election of the chair, who shall be a member appointed by a participating municipality to the authority. Number two, the election of one vice chair, who shall be a member appointed by a participating municipality to the authority. I am going to ask for nominations for the position of chair. Number two, I will call for nominations for the position of chair 3 times. I will require a mover to do that. Number 3, I'll request a motion to close nominations, a mover and a seconder. And number 4, I'll inquire whether the nominee is or nominees are willing to accept their nominations. If there's only one nominee, that individual will be declared into position by acclamation. In the event that more than one member is nominated for the position of authority chair, I will request a motion from you to nominate 2 scrutineers. And I have those names. They are Michelle Michelanti and Eleanor Hagee. Oh, there she is. Okay. Each nominee will be permitted not more than 3 minutes to speak for the office in the order of alphabetical listing by surnames. I don't have a watch, so somebody's gonna have to
Get my
keep
timer
track.
ready.
Upon acceptance by the nominees, stand for election ballots will be distributed to all of you. And in the event that the members are participating online and a vote takes place, a poll will be created through Zoom and opened while ballots are being distributed. If there are more than 2 nominees, and upon the first vote, no nominee receives the majority of the election, we will then, the name of the person with the least number of votes shall be removed from further consideration for the office, and new ballots will be distributed. In the case of a vote where no nominees receive the majority required for election, and where 2 or more nominees are tied with the least number of votes, a special vote will be taken to decide which one of such tied nominees' names shall be dropped from the list of names to be voted on in the next vote. Number 3, should there be a tie vote between 2 remaining candidates, new ballots shall be distributed and a second vote held. Should there still be a tie after the second ballot, a third vote shall be held. And should there be a tie after that third vote, the election of the office shall be decided by lot drawn by the acting chair or designate. Would be designated. So that is the process that we'll use for the chair. For the vice chair, the process is identical. It's the same, just substituting the word vice in front of it. That would fit you. We'll then go on to the elections of the hearing committee. And maybe I'll wait till then to go through that because that was quite lengthy. So I'll open up the nominations for the position of chair for the authority for the next year.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Dean Trentowski for the chair of UTRCA Board of Directors.
Are there any other nominations for the position of chair, the authority, for the following term, for next year, for the following term? Okay, I'm going to ask, are there any other nominations for the position of chair of the authority for next year? First, ask. I'll ask again, are there any other nominations for the position of chair for the authority the following term? And the third time, are there any other nominations for the position of chair for our succeeding term? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close nominations? Sorry, thank you, Paul. Paul and George. Dean, wherever you are you willing to let your name stand for the position of chair of the authority?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am. Thank you.
I then, seeing no other nominations, you are acclaimed, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you, and thank you to Brian for the nomination, and I look forward to the continued support of staff and board members as we proceed into the year upcoming. I'll provide more comments later.
Thank you. I'll now open the nominations for the position of vice chair of the authority for the succeeding term.
I'll nominate Mark Schattenberg.
Mark Schattenberg, thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair for the authority for the succeeding term? Since there's only one nomination, can I have a motion to close nominations? I need a mover and a seconder.
You don't need to ask 2 more times.
I'm sorry?
If that's two
Two more times.
to ask 2 more times.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry. I'll ask again for the nominations for the position of vice chair for the following term. I'll ask a second time for the position for nominations for the position of vice chair. And I'll ask a third time for the position, for the nominations for the position of vice chair.
I'll move that we close nominations.
Thank you. I need a secondary. No, George, thank you. Are you willing to let your name stand as for vice chair, Mark?
Yes, I am. Yeah, and thanks for the nomination from Paul Mitchell, and also want to thank Brian Petrie for his great work as being a chair the last couple of years for our board. Thanks.
So you are declared by acclamation to be the vice chair for the authority for the succeeding term. Now, the next thing is the election of the hearing committee. The members of the hearing committee consist of the chair, the vice chair, and the past authority chair, and 2 additional members. Since we have a past chair, we need 2 members. So I will call for nominations for the positions of hearing committee members. I need 2.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Sandy Levin.
Mr. Levin. Dean.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I nominate Jim Craigmile for the hearing committee position.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for the positions, the 2 positions we have on our hearings committee?
Mark Scheinberg has his hand raised.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Yes.
Mark.
Mark, it's hard to see that hand straight.
Yeah.
Joe. Mark,
Yes, I would like to nominate Paul Mitchell for the Hearings Committee.
are there any other nominations for the two positions on our Hearings Committee? Thank you. I will ask for nominations for the two positions on our Hearings Committee once. I'll ask for further nominations for positions on our Hearings Committee twice. I'll ask a third time for any other nominations for the positions of members on our Hearings Committee. Can I request a motion to close those nominations? All. Thank you, Jean. I will ask each of Sandy, Gerald, and Paul, are you willing to accept the nomination? Made?
Yes, I am.
Gerald? Jim.
Yes, I am.
And Paul?
I want to thank Mark for the nomination, but I'm going to decline. I have very much enjoyed my last 2 years on the Hearings Committee, and I've learned a lot. But I volunteered 2 years ago because as one of 6 returning members to the board, I felt it was my responsibility to step up until one or more of the new members felt that they were willing to join the committee. So I'm very happy to see Jim throw his hat into the ring, and I think it's the best interest of the committee and of the board that Jim and Sandy be the 2 elected members of the board of the Hearings Committee.
Thank you very much. Since there are only 2 nominations, Sandy and Jim, I declare those positions filled by acclamation. Well, congratulations. Now we have to elect the Finance and Audit Committee. It consists, Finance and Audit Committee consists of the chair, the vice chair, and 1 to 3 additional members as stipulated in our administrative bylaw. So I'll call for nominations for the positions of Finance and Audit Committee members.
So I'll nominate Sandy Lennon.
3. Andy,
I'll nominate Brian Petrie.
Brian Petrie. I have another position open.
Nominate Paul Mitchell, please.
Are there any other nominations for the positions on our Finance and Audit Committee? It's 1. Sorry. Dean.
Has his hand raised.
Dean.
I'd like to nominate Harj Najjar to the Finance and Audit Committee.
Are there any other nominations for the positions on our Finance and Audit Committee? And the third ask is, are there any other nominations for the positions on our Finance and Audit Committee? Can I ask for a mover and a seconder to close nominations? Thank you.
Was it? Who closed?
Anna.
Anna
Scott.
and Scotty.
Are each of you is named prepared to allow your nominations to stand?
Yes, Mr. Acting Chair.
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
At that point, I am going to withdraw feel there's a great representation on the board, much similar to Paul. I joined this committee at a time when we didn't have a lot of returning members, but I am more than confident that the people who are stepping forward are much better financially able to make recommendations than myself. Full trust.
Well, thank you very much. Since there were only three nominations, I declare those positions filled by acclamation. Thank you very much. Congratulations. The last one. The last committee of the election of the Source Water Protection Committee Liaison Striking Committee. I'll call for that. A nomination for, there's only one. So I'll call for that the first time.
Chair nominates Sandy Lynn.
Sandy Lynn. Okay. Are there any, second time I'll ask, is there another nomination for the Source Water Protection Committee Liaison Striking Committee? And I'll ask a third time, are there any other nominations for the position on the Source Water Protection Committee Liaison Striking? Can I have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
Brian? Paul? Are you prepared to accept that nomination, Mr. Levin?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Since there is only one, then I declare that position filled by acclamation. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you for making us. Although I can't see. Why resign?
I'm not the only chair, so I don't have to do anything. It's up to Dean now. It was said at the end with Sandy.
Thank you very much. Thanks, man. Congratulations to all. You can't be there.
Mr. Chair, it's back to you, sir.
Thank you, past Chair Petrie. So item 11 is notices of motion on our agenda. I'll check with Michelle. No notices of motion had been received prior to the meeting. Just wanted to confirm with Michelle if anything has been submitted at this time.
No, not for the next meeting.
Okay. Nothing? All right, so I'll just check with the membership again. Does anyone have a notice of motion to bring to the floor for a future meeting? Last call. Don't see anything. Okay. So item 12, chair's comments. I apologize that I'm not in person to deliver my comments, but I'll do the best I can from this position. I guess to start, thanks once again to Brian for the nomination for the chair's position. And I'll repeat my thanks to the rest of the board members and their staff, not only for their endorsement, but for their cooperation in the past, during the past year. Just completed my second year on the board and entering into my third year. It's been kind of living or learning in the fast lane, and I appreciate everybody's support and encouragement along the way. Want to thank first of all Brian for his dedication and leadership for the last 2 years as our chair and now past chair. I think that the definition of leadership would be that the leader doesn't rock the boat, but instead the leader steadies the boat, and Brian has certainly done that during the last 2 years through some very difficult changes and challenging changes that the board and the organization has faced in the last 2 years. And I appreciate all the work that Brian has done, both at meetings, but behind the scenes, with staff and with our member municipalities. It's greatly appreciated, and you've certainly set the standard there for the roles and responsibilities of a chair, and I will do my best to continue in that vein. Want to thank Paul Mitchell for his service on the hearing committee, and it was greatly appreciated. Want to welcome Mark Schadenberg into the role as vice chair. Look forward to working with Mark more closely on board issues, and welcome Jim Craigmile into the hearings committee role as well. Again, looking forward to working with Jim in that capacity, and looking forward to continuing to work with everybody on the board, our staff members and our member municipalities. I think just going back on the conversations that we've had throughout this meeting, communication and cooperation is going to be the continued key focus that we need to have in the year forward. There's lots of continues to be lots of challenges and with respect to regulations and finances and just the general governance of the organization, and the cooperation with our member municipalities in the watershed and the public at large as well. So there will be lots of work for us to do, and I look forward to working with everyone to address the challenges and the issues going forward in the year to come. With that, I will turn it over to members' comments, and I would give the first priority to our outgoing chair with member comments, and then to our newly elected vice chair and committee members if they would like to make comments after Brian does.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been assured I'll be a time to address everybody at the AGM, so I will keep this one short. Be prepared. No, I've been known to talk. No, I certainly want to thank everybody for the support. It's certainly, staff have been, you guys have been the rock stars these last 4 years since all this turmoil started, and certainly I can't thank enough for the support. And certainly, the great thing is, we're all residents of the watershed, and certainly having those conversations and the communications that helps understanding go a long way. There's certainly trouble still going ahead. So one of those things is the fee freeze that's still in place. We did receive correspondence from the minister that's going to continue. Recently, I attended Roma, where there was what they call the bear pit, the minister's session, and that was one of the questions that came up, not by myself, but to others, that there's 2 questions on that, and it was whether that was going to be looked at, and the minister probably gave the most direct answer I've ever heard in those sessions. Is a resounding no, is not changing. There's no want to do that. But what I did find interesting was there was a different message attached to it this time. Was that originally in the correspondence, it was made to make sure that housing was made more affordable. The answer that was given now is that he wanted to see more efficiency throughout the conservation authorities. He said some are very good and others need to change. I did follow up with the minister, private conversation outside of that, as we are going through a process to try to be more efficient and trying to seek more clarification on what they're looking for. If he could correspond with us on that to make sure that we knew exactly what they're looking for as we go through this process, so we can help incorporate that in the spirit of communication. He did say that he had provided that information through KPIs and stuff like that. But certainly that's something we could follow up with. That's a change in direction as far as the reasoning behind the fee freeze. There is a growing thing out there about municipalities wanting that, and certainly as we go into our budget talks with our municipalities, that's a big one there, is not being able to place those burdens, that put those fees where we need to be more cost effective. So I thought I would share that as an update. Certainly it's not just us that are feeling that, it's other municipalities and conservation authorities as well. And that message is, but that was, I'll give him credit. It was a clear answer, and that's all you can ask for. Certainly you don't have to agree with policy, but appreciate the communication on that. And I'll certainly turn it over to anybody else.
I know you can't
Thanks.
see me, but it's
Thanks,
Paul.
Brian. Different hands up. I'll start with Mark and then Jim and then Skylar.
Yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, I've been on this UTRCA board for 6 years, and I've enjoyed it very, very much, and looking forward to the next 2 years working closer to Dean and the rest of the staff at the UTRCA as far as being a vice chair now on this committee board. One thing I've always really enjoyed is sort of the trails angle and the recreation side of things. And with that in mind, there might be an amendment or something that might have to be put on the Piddock Conservation Authority website for the 2026 year. And it's really surrounding around good news, because the MPP for Oxford, Ernie Hardiman, late last week announced that the city of Woodstock is receiving a significant fund, $2.56 million, to urbanize Piddock Park Road. So that goes all the way from Van Sittert, which is Highway 59, kind of a big crescent all the way around to Tollgate Road, which is County Road 4. When I talk about urbanizing it, anyone who sort of, doesn't matter if you're going there camping or just going for a walk along Piddock Park Road in Woodstock, you realize that after dusk, it's a pretty dark street with no sidewalk. So that'll be rectified, as well as other improvements. And I think lighting on that street will be very important, and curbs and whatnot. So 2026 might be a fun year to try to get to the Piddock Conservation Area, but I'm sure they'll do it sort of in stages as far as the road work goes. So that'll be good news, and for the Piddock Conservation Area in general. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to, and I'm looking forward to 2 more years on this board now as vice chair. So thanks a lot.
Very good, Mark. Thank you. Jim, you're next.
Yep, my mic's on. I'd just like to say that I'm really looking forward to being a member of the hearing committee. I'd really like to thank Paul Mitchell for his extremely kind words and his backing out, because with the experience there's no doubt in a vote he would have been successful in being on the hearing committee again. I'm always looking forward to challenges and learning things. I spent my first 2 years here on the board. It is a big learning curve. It takes a lot to get up to speed, and I do have an interest in planning, and I'm really looking forward to being on the hearing committee. I'm looking forward to meeting closer with the other members of the committee, and us all getting to know each other a lot better. So I'm really looking forward to the next 2 years.
No, great, Jim. Thank you. And once again, welcome to you and Mark as new members. Skylar, go ahead, please.
Thank you, and congratulations to everyone for their new spots. I just wanted to share, if people aren't aware, there is a Middlesex Land Farmers Breakfast tomorrow, and I just put some stuff in the chat if anyone's interested in going. They're going to be talking about farmland, conservation, and other topics about agricultural land. So I can't go, but I really wish I could, because it looks like a really great lineup, and I confirmed with the organizer that people can still register. And then additionally, kind of in conjunction to that, I don't know if people are aware, but I did want to let people know that London is considering expanding our urban growth boundary. We will still stay within our city limits, but it is a topic for discussion at City Council. So if people are interested in discussing that or potential impacts on the watershed, happy to chat about that as well.
All right, thanks, Skylar. Don't see any hands up.
Or Dean, it's Paul. You can't see me on the screen.
Nope,
But
go ahead. Go ahead, Paul.
I'd like to echo Dean's comments and thank Brian for his leadership for the last 2 years. I've had the opportunity to work with Brian for 6 years now on the board, and 2 years on both of the committees, and appreciate everything he's done. And it's great to have somebody sitting around the horseshoe who talks more than I do. I appreciate that. And congratulations to Dean. I fully supported your moving up into the big shoes. And I'm interested to see if you're still going to be able to keep as many notes and run a meeting all at the same time. I've never seen anybody who takes as many notes as the meeting's going on as you do. And I've also worked with Mark for the last 6 years, so I'm sure that he's ready to move into the vice chair's role, and I congratulate him on that. And I will like to congratulate the other members who volunteered for the committee, Sandy and Harj. And especially Jim, as I said, I think it's important that there is some turnover in the leadership roles, and you just don't have the same olds filling those leadership roles. And as I said, I was really happy to see Jim throw his hat into the ring, and I think he's going to be a valuable addition to that hearings committee. So I look forward to the next 2 years on finance and audit. The dollars are my big concern around this table. I look forward to contributing in that role. So I look forward to lunch at the AGM.
Dollars.
Oh, good, thanks, thanks, Paul, and I'll be practicing my shorthand to keep my notes up to par going forward. So Harj, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yes, and again, thank you for the nomination. You know, it's been a privilege to serve for the last 2 years and this coming year as well. You know, I learned so much from the UTRCA board of directors and all the reports and all the presentations that we get, and you know, just from a personal perspective and also sharing it with, you know, the city of Stratford. And also wanted a big thank you to Tracy. She did come out to our budget meeting, you know, and I think everybody was extremely, you know, I think they learned a lot, and the amount of it was a great discussion during the meeting and then even afterwards. So Tracy, thank you for, you know, taking the time and coming out and, you know, coming seeing us there in Stratford.
Okay, thanks, Harj. Anybody else? Last call? No, I think we have a very good team here with our board of directors and our staff, and I think we're more than capable of dealing with any items or issues that come our way in the future. So I'm quite confident in our ability to move forward and carry on with our roles and responsibilities. So thank you, everyone, for your comments. And at this point, I will turn it over to our general manager, Tracy Annette, for her comments.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Again, I would just say congratulations to everyone and thank so many for continuing in the roles and for seeing some new members, because I agree. I do think that's a great learning opportunity for more members to have that knowledge around the table, especially on those committees when we have more fulsome discussion. And having that shared knowledge just benefits the entire board. Staff certainly appreciate that, and staff have always felt very supported by this board. And you've also played, so thank you. Speaking of new roles, I'm also going to announce that Tatiana Lozier is filling an acting manager of integrated partnership management because Brad Glaseman has retired from position after 40+ years of service. He didn't want a lot of fanfare, but I'm certain that it is not the last we have seen Brad. He will be popping around. You know, we offered the role of acting as we continue to work towards finalizing our strategic plan, making sure that as an organization, our structure is also reflecting our delivery of programs and services moving forward. So just taking a little bit of a time here as an acting role. The position was also offered to Tara, who graciously offered to support the role as Tatiana fills that role. So, you'll see Tatiana in these meetings as well. And looking forward to seeing the next steps in our evolution as we finalize our strategic plan. So more on that to come. Again, just looking forward to the AGM being in person next month and really reflecting on everything that we've been able to accomplish as an organization in 2024, and looking forward to 2025. With that.
Yep, thanks, Tracy. And yes, also looking forward to the AGM myself, Tuesday, February 25th. So that will be a very exciting day. And before I call for adjournment, I would be remiss if I didn't also welcome back Sandy Levin onto our committees as well. Sandy provides, as always, a great depth of experience and knowledge, and dedicated leadership towards the organization. And on behalf of myself and the rest of the board and staff, we're very grateful for Sandy's presence on the board as well. So item 15, call for adjournment at 11:34 a.m.
Mr. Chair, Brian, I move that we adjourn.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Seconder, Skylar. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And believe we are adjourned at 11:34. Thank you, everyone.